Move on. The Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, their season fell a little bit short of their ultimate goal last year, losing to the Chiefs in a pathetic performance from the Ravens in the AFC Championship. Just an awful game plan. They looked fucking terrible. Really disappointing. It's no longer about the regular season for the Baltimore Ravens. It's all about what they do in the postseason. They're one of those teams now. They have an 11.5 win total. Very high. Last year it was 9.5, Reagan. I was like, oh my God, hammer the over. I predicted 12. What happened? They got to 12. They won 13. Did they win 13?
They did.
Yeah, they won 13. So I was a little off.
The number one seed.
Yeah, but, I did predict the Ravens last year. I did predict Lamar Jackson MVP. I do like that, Not to toot my own horn a little bit. But Reagan, key adds here. Derrick Henry, obviously. Nate Wiggins in the draft. Some secondary help. Key losses, Patrick Queen, Jadeveon Clowney, Geno Stone, Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, John Simpson, OBJ, Gus Edwards. A lot of contributors from a really good team last year. Where do you have the Ravens this season? Do they get to 12 wins?
Well, obviously, they also lost Mike McDonald, their DC as well, who the Ravens, I believe, had the least. I think they were first in points allowed. I don't quote me on it, but I'm almost positive they were because most of their games are very low scoring. But I think that's going to be a big loss on top of all the other losses. I have them going 9-7 and missing the playoffs.
Reagan, did you forget that they play 17 games now?
I'm sorry, 9-8. 9-8.
9-8.
Hey, bud, they don't play 16 games. Yeah, I have them going 9-8. I said before the Browns have the hardest schedule, or the second hardest. Actually, the Ravens have the second hardest. The Browns have the hardest. So I think the fact that their schedule's so hard, but that's not even the biggest thing for me, man. They're losing 3 of their 5 starters from last year on the offensive line, 2 to the Jets. So I think that is a massive blow because, look, that unit, they were healthy. They played a ton of games together, and they were able to will Lamar to an MVP last year. You're banking on a lot this year. I mean, Derrick Henry's getting older, coming off the worst year of his career. Even if it still was 4.2 yards a carry, it was the worst season Henry's ever had. The guy's a horse. I'm not going to deny it. But if the offensive line's not great, I think it's going to be a very similar outcome to Tennessee. I think teams are going to still be able to stack the box a ton on the Ravens here because, A, Lamar's not the best passer. He's obviously improved year in and year out and gotten better. But still, he's not that. Hey, he's still not that pocket protector that you're more worried about him with his legs. On top of that, they lost OBJ, and while he wasn't a big impact on the team, they also didn't add anybody. They kept Zay Flowers, who I'm super excited for. I do agree with you that they're going to have to go to more of a 2 tight end set, and I think they should between Likely and Andrews because those 2 and Flowers are your best pass catching options. But still, they don't really have, unless you believe in Bateman, which both of us don't.
No.
They don't really have that number 2 or number 3 receiver that you feel confident in. And I think that's going to have a big impact here because teams are going to stack the box a lot, and I'm not excited for it. And then on the defensive side of the ball, just so many losses. And I'm worried about the pass rush because obviously Mbadamike, they paid him. He deserved to be paid. But you lost Clowney, a guy who actually had a career year, which is crazy, at 9.5 sacks. That's a career year for him. But you lose him. Why am I blanking out on his name? Oh, Kyle Van Noy had a career year, but he's getting up there in age too. I mean, he was your number 2.
Back. He's back.
No, he is back, but he's getting up there in age. So if you're relying on him to be your top edge rusher, I don't feel confident in that at all. You lost Patrick Queen. Obviously, Roquan's a stud, and the secondary is awesome. But I think this team's going to struggle to get pressure, and I think they're going to struggle against the run a lot. So I'm not confident in this defense going into this year. I think they'll still be middle of the pack, but I think it's going to be regressions on both sides of the ball this year. And that's why I got them going 9-8. And a lot of it has to do with the strength of schedule, but also the AFC is loaded. And I just think this team's going to struggle a lot.
I got 11-6. If Lamar Jackson's healthy, they're going to win games. They're 52-18 in the regular season since Lamar took over as a starter. So they're 4-9 without him. If Lamar's healthy, they're going to win games. I got him at 11. I'm going to touch on the defense first because I have a lot to say about what you just said about the offense. They didn't just lose Mike McDonald, Reagan. They also lost their DB coach and D-line coach, who are now both defensive coordinators. So that's a lot of continuity lost. They weren't great against the run last year, but it was fine. It didn't really matter. They had the most sacks in the league last year with 60. You touched on losing that 9.5 from Clowney. Van Noy was solid. Odafe Owe had 5 sacks last year, but he was 13 amongst pass rushers in pressure rate. So now with no more Clowney, obviously Owe is going to have to take over that role and develop. And they also, remember, they took David Ojabo out of Michigan a couple years ago, but he popped his
wise, right?
Achilles at the combine. He's only played in like a handful of games the last 2 years. Maybe he can be that third or fourth pass rusher and live up to his draft status, because he was going to be probably top half of the first round pick before he popped that Achilles. So maybe he can live up to that pedigree. They took Trenton Simpson out of Clemson in 2023 in the third round at linebacker. He'll replace Queen. Hasn't really played much, so that's a big question mark. I agree with you there, Reagan. Definitely a big question mark. The secondary's loaded, though. Kyle Hamilton's dog. Marcus Williams, although not as good as he was for the Saints, still good. Geno Stone's a tough loss, though, at the back end of that defense.
Yeah, obviously, he led them in interceptions. He had 7 last year.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good. Obviously, Marlon Humphrey's a dog. I like taking Nate Wiggins at corner out of Clemson. He's a burner. I think he ran like a high 4.2 or low 4.3 in the combine. Really good downfield, freak athlete. They added TJ Tampa at Iowa State. He's in our solid corner. Now, I think the defense can be really good. I think it's a top 10 defense for sure. But obviously, what you highlighted, Reagan, the biggest question mark here is the offensive line. They lost 3 starters, and I don't know. It just seems like, that's just tough for me. I know Zeitler's getting up there in age. So is Morgan Moses, but I don't know. They played really well last year. 5th in ESPN's run block win rate, 9th in ESPN's pass block win rate. So kind of tough losing all those guys. You already mentioned the explosive run rate down for Henry, the yards per carry down, but he should draw more stacked boxes. Lamar Jackson is actually good in stacked boxes, Reagan. 1st in expected points added per dropback, 4th in yards per attempt with 7+ man boxes. So go ahead, stack the box and horse Henry. That's when Lamar's at his best passing the football, Reagan, which is why I'm not that concerned about it. And we already touched on the Gus Edwards goal to go carries last year. Henry's going to score a lot of those touchdowns, but I agree with you. Wide receiver still concerned. Get Isaiah Likely more involved, please. That's my boy. 21 catches for 322 yards and 5 touchdowns in the final 6 games of the season without Andrews. Let's run some 2 tight end sets. Ultimately, John Harbaugh's a winner. Lamar Jackson's a winner. As long as Lamar Jackson's healthy, they're going to win games. They're going to be in the playoffs. Although, I think last year was their opportunity. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. On paper, at least. Actually, not even close. But still 11 wins.
Yeah, and the AFC is just so much better this year. And
it is.
Guys look at the Texans. They got better, but like Stroud's going in the year 2. There's just so many teams where you just got to expect. And like the Bengals weren't even like the Bengals, Chargers, Jets weren't even a factor last year where we expect them to be a factor this year. So it's interesting. Some teams got to give, and I just think this is a team that missed their window and is going to struggle this year. I really do. I'll eat crow again. Hey, I still got to run this milk mile, so you might as well throw another one on.
Dude, I think 9-8 is kind of crazy, though. I think that's crazy.
When you really look at it, though, it's crazy. But then you look at the schedule, and then you look.
It is really difficult. Yeah,
it just feels like this is the most stacked the NFL's ever been. But not just that, this is the most stacked the AFC has ever been. It's crazy how deep and good the AFC is. Like before, like there's 3 teams I think can't fight for the playoffs, and you could say maybe I'm a little high on the Titans, but still, even if you want to take the Titans out, that's still 12 teams fighting for 7 spots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're going to need that offensive line to stay healthy, protect Lamar, and I think they'll be all right. They need some young bucks to step up.
Sure. You better hope, man.
Yeah, Andrew Voorhees, they took him out of USC, tore his ACL last year, but still had the most bench press reps at the combine. So assuming he's going to step into one of the guard spots, just a big question mark, man. Just a big question mark.
Voorhees represent. Woohoo!
Yeah, woohoo! All right, MVP, Reagan. I mean, come on, it's Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you on that as an MVP. I mean, you could also make a case for Roquan as the leader of the defense.
Yeah.
Especially with
he's
the
my
loss
deep
of
boy.
Patrick Queen.
He's my deep boy, Roquan. Yeah. He's
mine as
I mean, you could go Matabuke if you want, but I just think
Kyle
Roquan,
Hamilton too.
You could go Kyle Hamilton, another All-Pro. I just think Roquan really transformed the defense as soon as he stepped in when he got traded from Chicago, and ever since he got there, it's just been a different animal. He sets the tone. He's the leader. I think Roquan's the most valuable player on that defense. Although Kyle Hamilton wears a lot of hats.
I will say, like, I don't root for injuries at all, but Tyler Huntley's gone. He left for the Browns. So the backup now is Josh Johnson, and they drafted Devin Leary. I think he played at Kentucky last year. I know he was at NC State prior to that. But it's a lot of question marks if Lamar is to miss any time this year at quarterback. You don't feel as confident.
If Lamar gets hurt, they're screwed.
But even if he's to miss a little bit of time, like they don't have that backup plan where some of these other teams, at least they have a backup plan in place.
I think Tyler Huntley's in Cleveland now, but they
He
also
is.
brought in
Yeah.
Jameis Winston, so he's the third guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Interesting.
still, I'm more so just saying. But yeah, we both agree Lamar MVP. But yeah.
Yeah. X factor.
I mean, I want to say Lamar again, dude. Like, just because of the fact that the offensive line is going to be not great, and like, there's a lot of question marks with this whole entire offense. So if Lamar can just will his way through and have another MVP type season, then I think this team makes the playoffs. If he regresses at all, I think they're missing the playoffs because the defense. I don't know. There's so many X factors you can say here, but I'm going to go with Lamar, just basically needing him to almost will them to the playoffs this year because I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
I'm going to go Ronnie Stanley. Has really struggled to stay healthy since he signed that massive extension. We just talked about the amount of question marks on offensive line. Stanley can't be one of them. He's got to be healthy. He's got to be out there protecting Lamar Jackson. If he's healthy and he could bring along these young bucks along the offensive line, they'll be fine. But it all requires him being on the field. Rookie of the year, Reagan.
Oh, this is a tough one because this class is just not great. I mean, none of these guys really took him. I mean, I'd say probably Nate Wiggins just because he's going to be slotted in. You can make a case for Rosengarten, the guy who's slotted in to play right tackle right now. But I'll go with Wiggins just because they spent the first round capital on him. And I think even if he's not great, I mean, the fact that the rest of the secondary is elite, I think will hide the fact. So I think he'll hopefully have a big impact year one.
Yeah, I think Wiggins is a really fun addition to the secondary. One of the best secondaries already in football. I think it's definitely going to be Wiggins. That's my pick. Dark horse, Tez Walker, though, because they need help at receiver. And if he can actually tap into that potential a little bit, stay in the field, he's a really good deep threat. I think he'd be a nice compliment to Zay Flowers. That's a little dark horse for you, Tez Walker.
He definitely has a chance, man. Not a lot of competition there, so he's definitely going to have his fair share of chances.